right. Good morning. Can everybody hear me okay? Thumbs up, nods, Maya. Nice. Tracy. Okay. Sorry, I'm picking on Tracy here. Tracy and I go back, don't we, Tracy? Thumbs up. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to HR's Empathy and Evaluations training this morning. It is the 19th, 10 a.m. Hope everybody had a great break yesterday from work. I love that holiday in January. We go through the holidays in December and then get back to work. And then we get kind of a one day to stop and take a breath in January. It's kind of nice. I just wanted to quickly introduce myself for those that don't know me. I know many of you. Have worked with you for 3 years in talent acquisition. Seen lots of you, spoken with many of you. So Coaz is has a nice place on my heart. I know so many of you. My name's Abel Johnson. Work here in HR in the growth team. Recently moved from the welcome team, which is recruitment, talent acquisition, and now I'm on the growth side, which is more under projects and making sure that we treat our employees well and make sure we're getting you up to speed in your training and some other great things. So glad to be here with you today. I'll be facilitating the training today. Alongside me, co-facilitating the training as well is my growth team partner, Kyle Galloway. And I'll let him introduce himself here in a minute. He'll be helping with the training today. And then you also have most of the rest of the growth team here. Tiffany Trader, who's our fearless leader, Tiffany Whitman, and I'm not sure if Denise Stringer is going to join or if she's already joined. I can't see everybody, so she may be here in a little bit as well. Couple of house cleaning items. We are recording the training today. We're going to be recording. We've recorded each of our training sessions so far this year and last year. And then what we're going to do is we're going to send an email recap out after the training for those that couldn't make it today. And also for the rest of you who want to maybe review this training later on before you do your evaluations, maybe next month. A couple other things. If you have any questions, please feel free to unmute or throw them in the chat box. The rest of the team members will be able to read those out loud, make sure we're capturing what's being sent on the chat. Other than that, this is a 1 hour training. It's going to be quick and fast. So we'll be done here by 11. We'll leave some time for some Q&A at the end as well. So let us go ahead and jump right into the training. So as you know, the time of year is coming, March 1st deadline for our performance evaluations for our employees and those that we supervise and lead on our teams. What's great about the annual performance evaluations is we know that this is the time for us to chat with our employees about their accomplishments, about if they've met their goals or not, and also making some room for improvement and providing feedback and recognition where that's due. What's a little different this year, though, is we've had so many changes, right? We've had so many opportunities to grow and stretch in different ways that we maybe never have, where we're working remotely. A lot of us are. We've shifted our working environment, but maybe some of those expectations have changed as well. And so this year, when we think about evaluations, we want to emphasize that although things are kind of the same, they're really not, and they're different. And we want to make sure that we're keeping the word flexibility in mind as leaders and managers. And we'll get into that and how that plays a part, as well as empathy, as you can see from our title slide deck. You know, your primary goal as supervisors should be to help your employees perform their jobs to the best of their ability, to help them develop, making sure that they have the tools to do their job. We know that this requires a lot of commitment on your end and time and energy, but we know that whatever you put into that, you'll get out of it. And we know that our people and here at the university are center to everything that we do. So they deserve that time and commitment. I'm going to go ahead and kick it over to Kyle to introduce himself. He's going to go ahead and tell us some of the topics we'll cover today in our training, and then we'll go from there.
Thanks, Abel. Good morning, everyone. Welcome. Thanks for joining us. Glad to be here. My name is Kyle, one of the newer members of the HR team. Been around for about 3 months now, enjoying every bit of it, and looking forward to partnering with you all across the campus. So to jump in, today's topics, we're going to, discuss understanding 2020 and the challenges this year has brought us. I think it's easy to say that 2020 has been, either different or, it's been different, but it has been difficult for others as well. So we're going to discuss that. We're going to discuss how to show empathy and what that means, but really more importantly, how do we apply it in our discussion? We're going to discuss having the conversation regarding performance evaluations and what does a tone sound like this year, and how does the conversation piece get tailored into the empathy theme that we're discussing this morning. We're also going to discuss some things to be mindful of. A lot of these topics will be like HR related, so there'll be some good education on some laws and education that you may not know about. That's been certainly new this year during the pandemic. And we'll leave time for a Q&A like Abel said, but feel free to unmic if you have any questions on one of our slide decks. If you guys want to chat something in the box, this is an open discussion and we're just looking for a good conversation this morning, and feel free to just to hop on in. So for that, Abel, I'm going to kick it back over to you, sir, because I think you want to ask him a question.
Yeah, so let's go ahead and do the icebreaker question. Looking at the slide deck, you can kind of see some of maybe where this is going, but in one word, if you could describe managing your team remotely, or maybe just during this COVID-19 setting that we've all found ourselves in, what word would you describe that? Well, how would you describe managing your team this last year? And go ahead and throw it in the chat box. We'll read them out, or if you want to unmic as well, you can shout them out and we can talk a little bit about that. Resilient. Thanks, Tracy. Yes. Keep them coming. Lisa, hopeful. I like that one. Very positive. Okay. Yes.
You also have patience in there. Abel.
Patient. Okay, patience. Thank you. Surprising, unique. Unique. Kristen, that's a good word too. Lisa, interesting. Yes. So I'm going to pick on some people because, again, I feel like Coaz and I are tight. So Tracy, because you're wearing purple today with me, if you don't mind unmiking Tracy and telling me, why you chose that word and what's, kind of explain to the team and everybody, how's your experience been this last year with managing the team?
I chose to write in resilient, and I just chose that because I think we all have our own personal challenges that we're overcoming with COVID and the transition to, some people working at home, some people being in the labs, and not only personal, but we have work. So yeah, I just think it's resilient how we've all sort of overcome the different issues, both professionally and personally, and come together as a team and stronger than ever, I think. So, and with us, like, some of our people are 100% remote, some people are 50-50, some people are 100% on campus. So it's been interesting sort of making sure that we're all working in a safe environment, whatever that means to us. So.
Yeah, thank you so much, Tracy. Thanks for letting me pick on you. I appreciate your positive attitude about that. No, I think you're right. I think many of us are still, are remote, but like you said, some of our staff is still, we just talked with campus ops last week, and many of them are still on campus. They've never left. So it's very different. And all of us have to be a little bit agile and flexible to be able to adapt to our circumstances in our area. So I appreciate that. Thank you all for throwing in those comments. As you can tell, these words, we're all experiencing this differently and different perspectives, but I appreciate so many of you putting in words that are positive. Like, it's been challenging or unique, but maybe we've learned something different from as a manager and a leader. Maybe our management style has adapted. Maybe we've learned something about ourselves as leaders, and we've had to really engage our workforce, our employees differently and approach them differently, because we can't just walk down the hall and talk with them, right? So our style and our approach may be different, but these are good things that have maybe come from our COVID-19 working remote that before, at least in my mind, it didn't hit me that way. And I thought, oh, this is just going to be horrible. But honestly, a lot of positive things have come from this. So I hope that some of you have experienced those as well. So let's go ahead and kick it over to Kyle. Kyle will set the stage on understanding 2020, what's brought us here, and we'll kind of go from there. Did I see a hand, Tracy?
Oh, I was just going to say too, as far as, sort of how we are as managers, it's learning how each individual person has their own style. Some people are, more than happy working at home, and some people this just isn't working. And So I think as good managers, we need to learn how to help each person as an individual, not as a group.
Yes. I love your comment because, the managing, and I don't like using that word. I like using leaders. I think leaders is a better, higher level, right? But we definitely have to understand our employees, right? We have to know their language and their strengths and their weaknesses and how to communicate with them. And it's not going to be a blanket one fits all to every single person, right? So how I speak to Tracy and how I work with you may be different than how I work with Tiffany or somebody else. So that's very important to know. And I appreciate you bringing that up. I think Mackenzie just echoed what you said. So Mackenzie knows a lot about that as well. So appreciate all of you guys popping in there and saying those things. All right,
Yeah,
Kyle,
no,
I stole enough thunder. Go ahead.
you're good. No, a lot of great words. Thank you all for joining. There's no question that 2020 has been an unprecedented year for us all. As a university, we've had drastic changes with quickly transitioning, a lot of our jobs and our services to a virtual setting. We've adapted to the work environment to provide social distancing for roles that can't be performed virtually. And we're supporting, our employees through unexpected challenges that they're facing, such as homeschooling their kids or COVID-related 19 concerns and or diagnosis. So a lot of moving pieces are going on this year. Data shows over 80 million people worldwide have been affected with COVID-19. I think we all know that. So when you think about, what's been challenging for you as a leader, those same challenges and or concerns are also being faced by your employees or staff members. Our lives have changed, a lot along with our work. Social gatherings have been limited, and I'll explain a little bit later on how that can, affect someone's work performance. So, a couple of things to think about, prior to your conversation, with your employees. Do we have those discussions early on about what's expected of them, while they're at home? Have you set those clear expectations, or have you touched base with them recently to go over, expectations to moving forward? Because, a lot of us, like you said earlier, have been in a remote environment, or some have never left. So those conversations are crucial. If you haven't had them, then we encourage you all to do so as soon as you can. But it can be difficult to really evaluate someone's work, especially this year, if we haven't had those conversations. So, some of your employees have never left as they are essential to the business. So is it possible that they're also facing similar challenges to those that are facing in a remote environment? Maybe traffic's decreased if they're in an office environment, maybe tasks or duties have changed. So I think the answer is yes. So there's been changes all around, and it's not just a one size fits all. So because this year has been, very different for a lot of us, we believe empathy should, play a piece of the pie when it comes to evaluations this year. And, the bulk of our discussion this morning is going to be tailored around how to have a conversation. And I'm going to kick it back over to Abel to discuss why showing empathy is probably crucial more than ever, especially after this year. So Abel?
Yeah, thank you, Kyle. So, the topic slide was focused on this, and this is the meat of the presentation. We'll talk about, how we bake some of this into practicum, how we actually use it. But as we know, defining empathy is very simple. All of us can do it and Google it. Empathy is understanding someone else's feelings. When we were creating the content for this, I wanted to go deeper than that. And so one of the, in my opinion, great minds of our time, Simon Sinek, has a great TED Talk about empathy. We'll put it in the chat box if anybody wants to watch it later, the full content video. It's really great. I recommend it. But he defines empathy as this. He says, empathy is being concerned about the human being and not just their output. So what does that mean? Or why is that important? Well, as we know, we're hired to do a job here at Boise State, right? We all collect a paycheck. We have a job description, and that is true. We do care about output, and I'm not saying we don't, because we do. That needs to move. We need to move the needle and need to do the work. But in my opinion, we're also moving to a new phase, I think, in the world, in our workforce, and in the companies, and just being competitive, where our employees want to be attached to a mission, right? They want to care about the work. They want to be passionate. And as the managers and employees and leaders, we need to be caring about our people, right? The people that do the output. And so we need to also be concerned about that person on a personal basis, holistically. How are you doing, Tracy? How are you doing, Tiffany? How are you doing, Margaret? And I'm calling people's names out to see if they look up. Margaret and I have had some great talks over the years too. She's waving to me. So it's really funny. Thinking about COAS in this group, I've gotten to know many of you personally and stood in your office or stood in line at a concert and talked. And I feel like part of that is because, and ties back to empathy, I'm caring more about the people that we work with. And many of you know each other very well, working in the same college. But why is this important, right? To show empathy? Why do we need to care? And it goes back to our theme, right? So 2020 has been hard for many of us and different for many of us. And so those struggles that we're facing, professionally and personally, as managers and leaders, we need to be aware of that and how that affects your output, right? So your tone and approach as a leader should be one of compassion and kindness, using language that truly shows that you understand maybe why a project didn't get done on time or why it was delayed or just unfinished. And does it have to do partially with their output, has to do partially with the COVID-19 situation? Did they have the tools to do their job? Did their internet cut out? All these things that we don't know about, and we'll talk more about those barriers. We just need to be more empathetic about those things and put on those lens and perspective before we jump to conclusions and maybe those assumptions that we may have. So I want to caveat this slide, and we have it on recording, and we have it on recording 6 other times as well. But what HR is not saying is empathy is a get out of jail hall pass for 2020 for your employees. We're not saying that. But what we are saying is we need to be mindful of the struggles that our employees may or may not have faced this last year and their output because of things out of their control, such as a pandemic or an internet or children that they're, all these things that come up to the surface. So how do we do that, right? As supervisors and leaders? Well, Kyle mentioned it earlier, and I'll reiterate that and echo that. The question is, and this will answer that, is how often do you check in with your employees? Have you checked in with your employees since the pandemic? Do you understand the struggles that they're facing as an employee? Do they have the tools to support the job and perform their job adequately? And so these are all questions that we ask. And the best way to find those answers, I would say, is to making sure that we're checking in with our employees, whether that's weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, whatever that may be, but making sure that they understand that you care about them, right? Going back to the empathy, that we care about our people and not just that they do their job. So I'll get off my soapbox. Any comments or questions? I see many faces. Some of them I see pictures. Jenny's picture, love it. Mackenzie's there. Any questions or hands that go up? And growth team, please let me know if I missed somebody.
Hey, Abel. Margaret here.
Margaret, yes.
Yeah. Hey, I just wanted to comment on that. I don't have a lot of employees. Actually, I have one right now that's working because we don't have any students working for us. I feel like I haven't been, by my supervisors, haven't been kept in, in the circle very much. So I've made it a point to keep real good contact with my staff person, my administrative assistant who works in our department under me. And we do coffee once a week.
Yeah.
Even though we're both fully remote most of the time. And we do coffee once a week. And we also, I just make sure I reach out every few days and just say, hey, what's going on your end? And, and we'll chat online for a few minutes or over text or whatever. That means a whole lot to me to be, connecting with my people in my department, just on a whole, not just my staff. So
yeah, I still appreciate your comment, Margaret, and thanks for letting me pick on you as well. I only pick on those that I like. So
I know that, I always push your buttons, right?
For those that don't know, that's my style. You can read it in my bio that I wrote. I said the best thing about HR, or best thing about Abel, the thing you should know about Abel is I pick on you, and that's my love language, I guess. But
we did share Garth Brooks, so that was important.
We did. We'll always have Garth Brooks, yes, in line. Thanks, Margaret, for your comment.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I think it goes back to what we're saying, right? we care about people and not just their output. And as we go to mark our evaluations and as we sit down and have these conversations with our employees, and before we mark a 0, 1, 2, 3 and all these things, right, that we have, that by the way, we're required to do, right, but we also want to do as part of performance management, we want to keep these perspectives and these lens on this year because it has been so different. And so I think that's kind of what we're saying. Appreciate the comments. Keep them coming. So now, how do we actually practice empathy in our conversations when we go to have them, right? We have to do our evaluations, one-on-ones. How do we take everything that HR is saying, right? You guys are saying this. How do I take that and put it into practice and have the conversation? For that, I'll turn it over to Kyle and he'll explain that.
Appreciate it, Abel. Yeah, no, this video is great. It's about 3 minutes long, but, it'll give you the perspective on, what the tone, how to set the foundation for the meeting, as you do your evaluations. So I'm going to go ahead and play it right now. So like I said, it's about 3 minutes long, and we will come back here just shortly.
Conducting the performance review conversation can be challenging, both for you as a leader as well as for the employee. The employee may be concerned that they're going to be sitting in the hot seat and get judged. They might also worry about how the performance appraisal could affect the potential for them to get a raise. You might be concerned that your feedback can cause them to get emotional or defensive or even argumentative. That's why it's really helpful to have a plan in place when going into this conversation. So I'm going to share with you 7 tips to confidently have the performance review conversation. Tip number 1, don't ad lib. Use the forms that have been provided by your company for the performance review conversation. Number 2, make sure your employee gets to prepare the exact same forms so that you can be on the same page and there's no surprises for them. You don't want them to be frustrated when suddenly they feel like they're being judged for something that they just weren't expecting. Number 3, don't just dive in and get to business. Build some rapport. Set the tone by asking them how their week went. Thank them for showing up to the meeting, and maybe discuss something like how their family is doing or any vacation plans they might have. Number 4, before you give your feedback, first allow them in each category to tell you how they felt their performance was in the past year. Tell them where you agreed with their performance opinions, and then tell them where you may have differed. This is an important phrase. Instead of saying disagree or allowing room for any kind of argument, just say, I appreciate your feedback on that. I would agree, you did a great job with X, Y, and Z. Where my opinion differs a bit is, and then give the example. Number 6, when giving feedback, make sure you'll use only observable facts, not assumptive judgments. You don't want to say something like, Mike, it really seems like you've checked out and you don't even care anymore this past quarter. Instead, say something like, I've noticed you've been tardy 3 times out of the last 4 weeks. And in most of the meetings in the last 2 weeks, you've really only participated once. What can you tell me about this? This gives them an opportunity to share their side and really explain what might be going on with them. Which leads us to number 7. They may become defensive or argumentative. If so, as challenging as it may be, allow them the time to vent and listen to what they have to say. No need to prescribe an answer, just listen, and if necessary, ask them to share a little bit more.
Great tips. This, could be applied to, performance evaluations during any year, right? It's very important, as a leader, when you approach these conversations, is setting that tone to ensure that the outcome is going to be smooth. Because depending on, the evaluations, if somebody's on edge because of poor performance, we need to set them at ease a little bit, right? So again, if you're prepared, we're not ad-libbing, you have a plan in place, that's really step 1. He mentioned building the rapport. The conversation piece, again, allows the employee to get more comfortable, get more relaxed during this discussion, even if it's going to be negative. We practice this a lot in HR, and we've seen it work. So we truly believe in that. So building the rapport, setting the foundation, and really allowing the employee to speak and maybe agree or disagree on where you guys, came to your conclusion. And most importantly, we're also using just the facts. So that way that data supports, if someone's getting a 3 or a 2, we know why they're receiving this particular grade. And at the end, if there's any concerns by the employee, we're not there to always answer the questions. We're there just to let them vent and get out what they need to get out and come back later on with a plan or a solution. But again, these are just some examples and suggestions that, you can use as you have those conversations. Again, we like these phrases because they show the empathy piece, especially for this year. We appreciate how well you've adjusted working from home, or we appreciate how well you've adjusted, not leaving the office. We know this year's been difficult for you. So let's focus on some things that went well. I understand this year has been challenging, and, here are things that went well for this year, and here are the things that we could work on for the next quarter. So depending on, the situation, we believe that tone and showing that compassionate kindness up front allows that conversation to be easy for you and for the employee. And for that, I think we're going to kick it back over to Abel for more of the performance management piece and how to have the data to support the different numerical scores they're going to receive with their evaluation. So Abel?
Yeah, thanks, Kyle, for that. Tracy, we saw your comment. I love that comment. I'm going to take that comment, put a pin in it just for a second, and we're going to come back to it in the next slide. So I promise it's going to tie in. So this graphic does a great job kind of just illustrating the different points of performance management, right? So the evaluation is one tool, and it's part of a bigger how we manage our employee and our staff, right? So these are some other great tips to keep in mind, setting those goals in preparation, making sure we have the documentations, having conversation, which is we've been saying, all morning is key, right? Making sure that we're connecting with our employees. Again, the timing may be different for each employee or manager, but making sure that that's a consistent, ongoing thing. I joke in each of these sessions, and I feel like by now a robot could do my job, because I've said this 6 times, 6 different trainings, and my team's heard it over and over. So I apologize to them. But, the conversation is key. And the way our setup is, it's kind of like Christmas with my kids. All year long, they don't really know. They can't gauge if they're on the good list or the naughty list until like Christmas morning. And then they're like, do I get presents or do I not? I must have been good. So the performance evaluation is similar, right? If we don't talk with our employees throughout the year, they don't really know where they stand, or maybe they do, right? But we're kind of making assumptions until March 1st, right? Until we have that conversation. And so a better system and what we're advocating for is having continual discussions, having continual check-ins and dialogue, providing continual feedback throughout the year to give them room for improvement, right? If we tell them that something is wrong in February, then maybe they didn't know they were doing it wrong all year. So again, the conversation, this just ties into this point of conversation's key. And it builds transparency between you and your employee, and it builds trust, which is even more important. And then, another opportunity in those discussions is providing recognition and showing your appreciation to your employees as well, so that they're not hearing that at the very end of the year that, hey, you did a great job, but you're giving it that recognition and that feedback in real time, which is what this is saying. Feedback is important. So as we know, goals and part of the performance evaluation is setting goals or reviewing old goals. So goals still matter, of course, but they need to be adapted possibly to the current circumstances, especially this year with COVID-19. So maybe they didn't hit those timeframes or they didn't hit those goals. But again, what we're saying is that might be because of the pandemic and just everything that we've gone through, not only as a department in a college, but as a university. So take some time to think about your team's goals. Do they know what's expected of them? Do they have the tools to do their job and to get the goal, to meet the goal? And so this kind of leads into a question we'd like to always solicit and some feedback for is, and please feel free to, again, share, or I'll just start swiping and find somebody. Maybe Jenny will share this time. But how have you measured the performance of your employees during the pandemic? And this is just open. We'd love to hear maybe some methods, how maybe it's been successful for you in your department, or maybe some things you found out that aren't successful and you're like, yeah, that we tried that, it didn't work. But the question again is, how do you measure the performance of your employees or your staff during this pandemic? Jenny, are you talking?
Hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I have a mic situation that's fun. Sorry, everyone. So what we have done is we have bi-weekly one-on-ones with our staff. And we also have at the beginning of the pandemic, we started weekly or daily staff meetings. And then we scaled them back to weekly morning check-in staff meetings. It was like a check-in in the beginning, just to kind of keep everyone on task, because it was kind of distracting to all of a sudden just be scattered and not together. And so, but now we do our weekly meetings, and then we have bi-weekly one-on-one meetings. So we've kind of just been able to track what we're working on, what we're looking forward to working on, it just helps us focus. So that's one of the things that we've been doing.
I love that. And Jenny, let me ask you, do you guys ever just do anything fun? Do you ever just say, hey, how was your weekend? Or what do you guys do? What are the plans this weekend?
Absolutely.
Scott, your daughter?
We start our weekly staff meeting we rotate, and everyone brings like a joke or a meme or like whatever they want, a video. And so that's how we kind of break the ice. And we always start with more lighthearted things before we get into the agenda items. And I always send out an agenda now too.
I love it. So it sounds like in Jenny's area, and I picked on her because I figure, she's smart and she's already ahead of this. So thanks for sharing. But I think we should implement, and Tiffany Trader is on the call. We should implement something called What's Good, right? What's good? Tell us what's going on that's good. Give us some good vibes. So I appreciate that. As we know, that's working successfully for you, and we're measuring performance, but we're also caring about, again, the person. So I think you're doing a good job there. Any other thoughts from anybody else? Anybody similar circumstances or something even different than maybe Jenny that works for your team? I'll do a Zoom pause for just 10 seconds here. Okay, great. So one of the things, before we move on from this slide, one of the things that I wanted to hit on is, and this wasn't intuitive until we started creating the content and really started thinking about you as leaders and our employees. But we want to also make sure we're giving credit to our employees for their adaptability, right? So this year they've adapted. They've jumped from the rock to the lily pad and made that transition, not necessarily by choice, but by force maybe. But how they did it and their attitude and their willingness to do it, they were flexible and agile. And I think a lot of times we miss out on opportunities to reward them or just recognize them for being so adaptable. And we're here at Boise State, we're known for being innovative and being able to pivot. So I think our employees and our staff has done a great job doing that. But as leaders, I just want to make sure that we're also recognizing our employees and giving credit for that, because I think that wasn't easy for everybody, and it possibly still isn't. But the fact that they're holding on to the ship and they're going along with the ride, even with the waves crashing in, I think that tells them a lot about them and their employees and them as a person. So anyway, just something to throw out there before we move on from that slide that I thought was important. We're going to watch a quick clip. This is about 10-15 seconds. And it's my favorite slide, just a preamble here. It's my favorite slide of the whole deck. And then we're going to go ahead and take Tracys Pin and unpin it, and we're going to talk about how that relates. So I'll let Kyle start that video for us.
Look at the cute dog.
Okay. All right. So I'm looking. My favorite part of this training is this slide. And it's also my favorite because I have a chance to slide my phone here and look at all your faces as you're watching that. So I saw Tracy crack a smile. I saw Lisa Brady. She was dying in her chair. So I appreciate the smile giggles. So Tracy, getting back to your point, why did we throw this on the slide? We want to AmeriQuest does these great commercials where their slogan is just that. It says, "Don't judge too quickly, we won't." And why that's important and how that ties into empathy and evaluations this year is just what Tracy said in the chat, which is we don't always know the full story. As leaders and managers, we're in a certain position where we see a certain perspective. And from one perspective, something may seem wrong or weird or off, but from the employee's perspective, maybe nothing's wrong, right? They don't see it that way, or they didn't think they did anything wrong. And so unless we have dialogue, unless we're having those chats and communicating, it may seem awkward, and from one perspective may be wrong, but from another it seems innocent. But going back to what Tracy was saying in her chat, a lot of people may appear to be fine, but maybe they're struggling inside, right? And whether that's with just the changes that we're in, is isolation, working from home, we don't know. So how does all of that play into what we're saying? Well, the empathy comes back into play, and we'll talk about these layers of the iceberg here in a minute. But I just thought that this video kind of conveyed in a funny, humoristic way, but also real way, kind of how we should be viewing our employees and their performance this year, in light of everything that we're going through. So Tracy, did you want to add to anything? Did you want to, convey what you were saying a little bit more, or did I kind of answer your question or that thought?
No, I think you did a great job explaining it. I just think sometimes if, just because people look okay doesn't necessarily mean that they are. And sometimes I think that it would be easy to just quit checking in on that employee and focusing more on somebody who maybe you think is having a harder time. I don't know. You did a great job explaining it.
Yeah, no, great. I appreciate you. And I think each employee should be checked in on, right? And hopefully that is being pieced out. I know that I take a lot of Tiffany Trader's time, but she does still make time to check in with me and the rest of the team. So, and again, going back to all this, right? As leaders and managers, be thinking that's a lot of time. That's a lot of my time. But again, what we're saying is, yes, but what is the cost of turnover in your department? What's the cost of losing that employee who maybe you could have had a conversation with, and making sure that you're putting the time in proactively, right? So I think that's still important, and people are important. So anyway, I hope we kind of explained that well to Tracy, and I think you also explained it even better. So any other thoughts before we move on to the next slide? All right, I'll let Kyle take it away.
Thanks, Abel. In HR this year, we've been, using the word harmless. Anything that's out of an employee's control really should not be used against them during the evaluation period. So what do I mean by that? This is more of an HR related slide. So approved leaves such as FMLA, Families First Coronavirus Act. We've had furloughs on campus. We've had people on ADA leave. When you think of these HR approved leaves and laws, and someone's gone for an extended period of time, we're not holding that against them on this evaluation period. So anything that they are approved for that allows them to be away from work, that's protected. We just want to make sure that the campus hears the same message as far as keeping those guys harmless for the time that they were out during those approved leaves. When we think about this year, and Abel and I have kids, we've had school and daycare closures, throughout the Treasure Valley. My kids, their first day of school was today, actually. So they've been home since March. So adjusting, the way I work, and I'm a newer employee, to ensure that I'm taking care of my kids, I'm taking care of my workload, and my internet connection with today's session is being used by a hotspot on my cell phone, because we've had so many people, including my wife, online at the same time. So again, sometimes that stuff is out of my control. So we want to ensure that, if Johnny Joe loses connection during an important Zoom meeting, it's probably not his fault. So let's ensure that we are uplifting those that are probably going through some issues that we have no idea about, right? Again, using Zoom is new for us. I'm cooking lunch for my kids at 12 o'clock. I have meetings sometimes at 12:15. So my camera's off sometimes. Am I paying attention? Of course I'm paying attention. This is my job. I need this for income, right? I need this. I need to do well for my team. But because my camera's off doesn't mean I'm not paying attention. So those little nuances that we're not thinking about sometimes, when we have these ongoing conversations and we know the circumstances about your team members. Abel, we'll discuss a little bit later on how, his eating patterns have changed being at work because we're just so busy and this is just so new to us. So again, many of us are wearing a lot of different hats. We discussed earlier, teaching our kids, cooking lunch, and working, this is all new for a lot of us that are doing all three at the same time. So the perception to leaders sometimes is, well, he's not really focused, he's not paying attention. But, underneath the layer, and Abel would touch on this here in a second, is, well, we don't know what's going on. And as long as the output's being, out there and work's getting done, then we need to understand, why this year is so different with juggling many different positions for our employees. And Abel will do a better job at explaining that than I would. So Abel, do you want to touch base on that iceberg perception versus reality piece?
Yeah. I think it goes back to that video that we watched, right? So as we know, and as many of you know, we're all humans and we all have different layers in our lives and as a person that make up ourselves, right? So this iceberg effect that we all know of, and many different analogies and narratives across other things, there's a lot underneath the ice that we don't see, right? And it goes back to what Tracy was saying. We beforehand, when we were all working at work, we probably saw some underneath the water, but for the most part, we probably just saw the professional side of people, right? We only saw the tip of the iceberg. What's good, and maybe what some may argue is distracting, but for me, I think it's good, is I get to see a lot more of Kyle's kids, right? I get to see what Kyle likes to do in the background. I get to see a picture or a poster of a Brooklyn Bridge, and we talk about New York, and so we get to see more of people in this virtual world, and we get to see more of those layers, lifestyle, behavior levels. But we also know that also may affect their output, right? Their work. And it goes back to what Kyle was saying. What motivates your employees? What struggles are they going? What's their mental health, right? Are they feeling isolated? Are they feeling depressed because they're social creatures and they're out extroverts and they're not around anybody? Does that affect their output because they're working from home? All these things may come into play in these questions that we may think about as we meet with our employees and as we're checking in on them. For me, I don't live in a big enough house where I have my own dedicated office with a door. So my office is in my master suite, my master bedroom, which I have enough room for, but my bed is, about an arm length away from me, a foot and a half away. And so I feel like I work a lot more hours because I'm like, oh, my bed's just right there. I can roll over from my chair to my bed and get into bed at night or in the morning. But maybe our sleeping patterns are off. Let's be honest, the fridge is not far away, so our eating patterns may be different than work. But all of these things, what I'm saying, are things that may agitate the layers of us that are coming up to the surface. And from a manager or leadership perspective, we should understand those, right? And how those may or may not affect their output and thus their performance evaluation that we go this year. So hopefully that narrative illustrates kind of what we're saying. Any questions or thoughts or concerns about any of this? Any disagreements or yes, I agree, or no, hey, I found this has been different for me. Awkward Zoom pause, insert here. Nothing from Sally. Sally, I don't see you, but I know you're there. Sally's a hard worker. I always pick on her as well.
I just want to say, this is Halalani. I don't have young kids. I have older kids, but even having older kids at home, like I don't have to manage them as much as I would if they were younger, but I still have to manage them. And when they're at home doing their own Zoom stuff and they're maybe on their own device while they're supposed to be paying attention, it's distracting to me because like as a mom, I'm like, well, no, put that stuff down. You got to pay attention. You got to do this, you know, so it's, even though they're older and I'm not like, they don't need me to go make them a meal or something. It's still distracting and difficult and something else to manage. So it's kind of interesting and fun. And I mean, it's great to be able to spend extra time with them sometimes, but it's also a challenge.
I appreciate your feedback. Yeah, you bring up a good point and something that nobody else has brought up thus far. So thank you. Even if you don't have little kids, even if you have kids, even if they're teenagers, right? I don't know if they're Zoom photo bombing you in the back of your camera or if they're playing Xbox and kicking you off. But yeah, we still have lives, right? We still have kids. And the way I see it, you know, I'm on my kids' playground. This is their playground, and I'm a guest there because, you know, this isn't my office. So I'm entering their world, right? And so I have to be aware of that. And sometimes it's screaming at the kids to be quiet. I got to get on a call, but I have to remember they're living here, right? I'm in their area. So just making those adjustments. And I appreciate you bringing that up. Thank you so much. Do we have another comment? Sorry, the team growth team or anybody? Did I miss something?
Can I borrow somebody's kids?
Yes.
I live alone and I just am like, so, I'm so tired of myself. I'll take your kids for a couple hours. They can entertain me while I work. That might be fun.
You can take one of mine and you can take one of Kyle's.
Okay, one of Kyle's and one of yours. Okay, we've set up play dates with Margaret.
Yeah. I'm giving you the naughtier one of mine though. So
oh,
just
good,
so you know.
because that'll be great. I love that. No, I just wanted to say that I don't have kids. I live alone, and this has been one of the hardest things ever in my life, just to not have a social outlet at all, for the most part. And I would just like love to have your kids for a couple hours.
You guys are bringing up great points, because that's another point is some people just don't have any kids, right? So they may just be feeling isolated. They may just be feeling so alone, and they are dying for that, right? So that's another layer that we don't know about as leaders. And when we're checking in, you know, how are you doing? How are you feeling? It's not just, did you get your job done? Did you get that project turned in? But it's, again, getting deep and letting them open up to you. And as you build that trust and psychological safety, they'll feel trustworthy. They'll feel like they can trust you to maybe say, I feel alone. I feel like I need some assistance. And again, that goes back to some things that we'll talk about here in a minute about EAP and some programs we have here at the university. So thank you so much, Margaret. I'll let Kyle jump in and show us this last clip of video.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks, Abel. You know, Matt Neese is no stranger to the campus community. You know, he's an expert here at BSU on empathy and mental, health. And, for us in HR, he's been a great resource for us, right? So we're lucky to have his partnership and his buy-in on our discussion around empathy. So we have a clip for you all that's going to really get, a true expert's perspective on what empathy is and, really how to apply it. So it's about 2 minutes long.
When it comes to applying my knowledge of empathy, there's a really great framework that helps me keep in check. On one end of the spectrum, there's what we call cognitive empathy. This is when I understand cognitively what's going on for another person emotionally, but I don't have my own emotional connection to that experience and therefore don't care enough to do anything about this understanding. On the other end of the spectrum, there's emotional empathy. This is when I'm connecting so much emotionally with my perception of what the other person is feeling that I lose myself in a moment. I become flooded with my own emotions in an attempt to align with the other person that I'm unable to be helpful in that situation. And then in the middle, there's what we call compassionate empathy, which, as you might expect, is a healthy blend between the first two. Based on my working knowledge of this person's life, when I'm feeling compassionate empathy, I have enough information to infer what they are likely experiencing. I have enough emotional connection to this person and their circumstances to have the desire to help And because I'm staying grounded in my own identity, I'm able to be moved by this experience and the ability to compassionately or empathically support this person.
Hope you guys enjoyed that. You know, in HR, we don't have all the answers. We're not sometimes the experts in everything, but we are really good at partnering with those who are. So we were glad to have, you know, Matt Neese's perspective on empathy as it really drives, you know, what this conversation today has really been about, you know, one of compassionate kindness. And that's what Abel started off with earlier with that same sentence structure. So we'll send you guys the full clip of this video when we do our recap email to you all, but we hope you guys found that insightful. So to move on, I know we're running out of time here. We're going to discuss the, you know, another piece of the empathy theme, which is the mental healness, especially during the pandemic. According to the CDC, you know, COVID-19, you know, has been stressful for a lot of us. You know, fear and anxiety for a new disease and what could happen can be really overwhelming and cause strong emotions in, you know, adults and in children. Public health actions such as social distancing can make people feel isolated and lonely and really can increase, you know, stress and anxiety. And ultimately, this could affect someone's work if it's not treated properly. Stress during an infectious disease outbreak can cause eating pattern or sleeping pattern behavior changes. It can worsen chronic health conditions. It could increase the use of tobacco and alcohol. So, you know, many of our employees, staff members here on campus, you know, have those same kind of worries or going through those same true issues. So during this time, is it appropriate for us to show a little bit of grace and compassion? And again, we think the empathy piece should be inserted here. As a leader, you know, it's your job to provide these tools to ensure that they're able to do the job, but to ensure that they're able to tackle some of their life's issues, such as EAP or other programs we have here in HR to ensure that, you know, they're on the right path to success. So this is very fast because we're running out of time here. Do you guys have any questions regarding that around mental health and the pandemic? If you do later on, feel free to reach out to us because we have a lot of tools and resources that you all can push out to your people to ensure that they have what they need to get through any challenges that they are facing. So as you start to wind down, we're going to leave some time for you all to ask questions, or we could clarify anything, or if you have any comments, feel free to unmic or submit something in the chat box. We have about a good 7 minutes, and Abel, do you have anything to add, sir?
No, I was just trying to read some of the chat. So, but yeah, please feel free to unmute or you can throw it in the chat box. And if you'd like to talk offline as well, we're more than happy to do that. A couple things we want to let you know. So again, this session was recorded. We're going to send an email recap out with this recording to all of you and the rest of the College of Arts and Science. We'll also provide those resources such as the TED Talks from Simon Sinek, some of the other resources that were the EAP resources, things like that. And then any questions, any answers to questions that you may have today, right now, we'll also throw in there. So again, we're trying to make this as easy as possible for you. We know that you have lots on your plate, but we do want to express our gratitude for the work that you're doing. Leadership is not an easy thing to do and to master, and it takes practice, and many of us are on the road to get there. But I know that as we do that and as we lift where we stand, we make a great impact on those that are around us and those that are in our charge. And so those people make it, they make a big difference for our university and for our department. And so I just would encourage you to continue to show gratitude, show empathy, but also just recognize your employees. Let them know that you care, in whatever form that may be, whether that's a card. I have had the privilege over the years, 3 years of being here, working with this group, many of you who've sent me cards or made me cards, and those have gone a long way. I've kept many of them. So for me, that just shows gratitude. So there's lots of ways to do that, but we would encourage you to do that. But please know that we are grateful for the work that you do, both seen and unseen. So now we have 5 minutes. Any questions, please throw them in the chat, on mic. If you don't have any, that's all we had for you today. Please feel free to jump off. We'll give you back some time, or if you'd like to stay on, we'd answer any questions.
Are our forms this year different from previous years?
Good question.
Oh, sorry, Abel, I jumped right in. They're not different from last year as far as classified and professional evaluations. They're the same. What we're asking is less if you only want to provide supervisor comments and an overall score that's acceptable this year.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, David.
Hi, Abel. Hey, this is Kevin Ferris.
Hi, Kevin.
How you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm all right. I threw a question in the chat, which is maybe related to Tiffany's answer there, but I just wanted to double check, right? We've been provided sort of template text to use for faculty evaluations. And I was just curious if there's similar things for classified and professional staff, or for more just like Tiffany was saying, just focus our feedback on the summary comments, but not have a template that we work from.
You're correct, Kevin. We don't have text templates, but what we're doing as far as knowing that you don't have the full picture based on the situation we're in, that you are able to just provide the supervisory comments and the overall score as a bare minimum.
Okay, that sounds great. Thanks.
Thanks, Kevin. Thanks for the question.
Yeah, great question.
Any other great questions we can answer for you?
Hey, Abel, do I need to, I don't know when they would do this recording, do I need to read the S/S signature? I know I threw it in the chat just as a reminder.
Oh, yeah, maybe we could probably put it in the email recap as well, but just for the group of people that are here, maybe that.
Yeah. As far as if you're not able to collect a signature, you can do /S/ and type the first and last name for the employee and supervisor, and that is considered a signature and can be sent to HR if you're not able to print and sign documents.
Can you use electronic signatures? I just had a little bit. Okay, thought so. Thanks.
Good questions.
Yeah, great questions.
Lisa has a question.
Yeah, I'm really sorry my internet dropped, and so I missed the last 10 minutes, and I think some of the questions might be really pertinent to what I have questions about. So will this recording be available for us to watch a little bit later, or is it just recorded for y'all's purposes?
No, yeah, great question, Lisa. We recorded the whole thing, and we'll send it out in the email recap shortly afterwards. So you can actually fast forward the clip to the last 10 minutes and watch all those questions if you need to. But feel free to ask as well if you have them. We have a minute so we can answer them as well.
Okay, I'll see what other questions have been asked, and then if I have some, I'll email them to you. But thank you very much.
Yeah, no problem. Happy to help. Well, thank you all for being here today. We will let you go. Please email us if you have any other questions, or contact Kyle and I, Tiffany, the rest of the growth team. And we hope you have a great rest of the day and a great evaluation season.
Thank you all.